The housing crisis nobody saw coming started with everyone watching the wrong disaster. Back in 2023, Wall Street analyst Meredith Whitney went on every financial show she could find and made the same prediction: Silver Tsunami. 30 million boomer homes flooding the market. Prices would crash, inventory would explode, buyers should wait. The media ran with it. CNBC, Bloomberg, local news, everyone. Buyers put offers on hold. Some boomers panicked and listed early. Real estate agents prepared for chaos. And then 2024 happened. Then 2025 happened. And the tsunami never showed up. Inventory stayed frozen. Prices didn't collapse. But here's what almost nobody noticed. While everyone was staring at the ocean, waiting for a wave that never came, a completely different crisis was quietly taking shape on land. And that crisis is now determining who can move, where they can go, and what options actually exist when they're ready. I'm going to walk you through what actually happened in this market, why the prediction failed so spectacularly, and what emerged instead. Because towards the end, there's a cultural shift happening that most people haven't even registered yet, but it's going to shape housing decisions far more than prices ever could. Here's the thing about predictions. They work great until they meet reality, and reality had a different plan. Think of the housing market like a dam. Whitney's prediction assumed the dam would open. 30 million boomers holding homes, aging in place, needing to downsize. The math seemed simple. When they move, they sell. When they sell, inventory floods in. Supply goes up, prices go down. Basic economics. Except the dam didn't open. It froze solid. And here's why. In 2021, if you owned a home, you probably refinanced into a mortgage rate around 2.5 to 3%. Historically low. Free money, basically. Then the Fed started hiking rates in 2022. By 2023, new mortgage rates hit 6.5%. By 2024, they were pushing 7 to 8% in some markets. Now you're a boomer. You bought your house 20 years ago or you refinanced recently. You're sitting on a 3% rate. You want to downsize. You look at the math. You'd be selling a 4-bedroom house with a cheap mortgage to buy a 2-bedroom condo with an expensive mortgage. Even though the condo costs less, your monthly payment goes up. After transaction costs, moving expenses, realtor fees, you'd be worse off financially. So you stay put. Freddie Mac studied this. They found that 44% of the drop in mortgage borrower mobility between 2021 and 2022 was purely due to rate lock-in. People physically able to move, financially able to move, just trapped by the math of their mortgage rate. That's not a small effect. That's half the explanation. Let me tell you about a guy I know. We'll call him Jim. Jim, 72. Paid off a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs of Chicago. His wife passed 2 years ago. He's rattling around in this big house alone. He wants to move closer to his daughter in Arizona. Reasonable plan. He lists the house, gets an offer for $450,000. Decent. He looks at condos near his daughter. 2-bedroom places are running $300,000. He thinks, great, I'll pocket $150,000 and live mortgage free. Then he talks to his financial advisor. The advisor runs the numbers. Property taxes in Illinois on his current home are $8,000 a year because of the senior freeze exemption he qualified for. In Arizona, property taxes on the new condo would be $4,000 a year. Sounds good. But the homeowner's insurance in Arizona is $7,000 a year because of wildfire risk. His current Illinois insurance is $1,200. Arizona HOA fees are $600 a month because of the amenities. Illinois HOA is $150. When you add it all up, Jim's annual carrying costs go from about $10,000 in Illinois to around $15,000 in Arizona. He'd be spending $5,000 more per year just to live in a smaller space. After 10 years, that's $50,000 of his $150,000 profit gone. And he hasn't even factored in moving costs or the emotional disruption. Jim stayed in Illinois, the dam stayed frozen. This is where it gets really interesting. While everyone was obsessing over resale inventory that never materialized, the real crisis was brewing in a sector almost nobody was watching: senior housing. The industry quietly ran the numbers a few years ago and realized they had a massive problem. By 2030, the projected need for senior living units in the United States is about 560,000 units. The industry is currently on track to develop about 191,000 units. That's a gap of nearly 369,000 units. To put that in perspective, that gap represents roughly $275 billion in unmet development need. To close that gap, developers would need to build at nearly double the fastest pace the industry has ever achieved in its entire history, just to maintain 90% occupancy. Instead, construction starts have fallen to some of the slowest rates this century. Why? High construction costs, high financing costs, thin margins. Developers can't make the math work, so they're not building. Meanwhile, demand is accelerating. 8 of the past 12 quarters have seen absorption rates exceed 5,500 units. That level was never hit before 2020, not once. The industry is absorbing units faster than it's building them. Now you might be thinking, okay, but that's just senior housing facilities. That's not the whole market. And you'd be technically correct. But here's the problem. When senior housing doesn't exist, boomers have to age in place. When they age in place, they don't free up the larger family homes that younger buyers need. But when they do finally decide to move, they're not moving into senior facilities that don't have capacity. They're competing for the same small homes and condos that millennials and Gen X are competing for. So you get this bizarre dynamic. Boomers hold 28% of 3-bedroom plus homes in this country. Millennials with kids hold only 14%. That's a huge mismatch. Boomers have the space. Young families need the space. But when boomers exit those large homes, they're not helping young families. They're blocking them in the next tier down. They're competing with millennials for 2-bedroom condos in walkable neighborhoods. Except boomers have one massive advantage. They can make cash offers using their home equity. Millennials need financing. In a bidding war, cash wins. Every time. So even when boomers move, they're not freeing up inventory for the next generation. They're just shifting which part of the market is tight. Let me paint you a picture. Susan's 68. She lives in a 4-bedroom colonial in New Jersey. Property taxes are $14,000 a year. She's been there 30 years. The house is worth about $600,000. She wants to downsize to a 2-bedroom condo near the beach. She finds one she likes for $375,000. She makes a cash offer. She's competing against a young couple, both teachers, who need a mortgage. The couple offers $380,000, 5% over asking. Susan offers $375,000 cash, no inspection, close in 2 weeks. Seller takes Susan's offer. It's cleaner, faster, no financing contingency risk. The teachers get outbid. Again, Susan moves into her condo. Her old 4-bedroom house sits on the market for 4 months because it's in the wrong location, the school district isn't what it used to be, and younger buyers want to be closer to the city. Eventually, it sells for $570,000, $30,000 under asking. A family with 3 kids buys it, but that family had to sell their smaller home to afford it, and that smaller home was bought by another boomer downsizing. You see the pattern? Boomers aren't leaving the market. They're just rearranging themselves within it. And because there are so many of them, they're competing with each other, driving up prices in the small home segment while creating downward pressure in the large home segment. The market isn't resetting, it's fracturing. But now you might think, okay, so it's tight nationally, but I'm in a specific market. Does this apply to me? That's actually the smartest question you could ask. Because the national story hides 3 very distinct regional patterns that are emerging. And depending on where you live, your reality is completely different. Pattern 1, high tax state exodus. Boomers are fleeing New York, New Jersey, Illinois, and California at accelerating rates. The primary driver is property taxes. In New Jersey, the average property tax bill is over $10,000 a year. In Illinois, it's similar. Even with senior exemptions and freezes, the burden is crushing for people on fixed incomes. So they're moving to Florida, Arizona, South Carolina, North Carolina, no state income tax in Florida, lower property taxes in Arizona. The Sun Belt is absorbing a massive inflow of boomer wealth. But here's the problem. Everyone had the same idea. A friend of mine just moved to Fort Myers. He said the traffic is worse than Chicago now, the infrastructure can't handle the population growth, and home prices have jumped 40% in 3 years. You're not escaping to a calm, affordable retirement. You're buying into a destination market where everyone else also wants to be. prices reflect that demand. Pattern 2. Climate-driven forced sales. Florida homeowners insurance is now running $6,000 to $15,000 a year depending on location and coverage. The national average is about $3,000. Some homes in flood zones or hurricane paths are literally uninsurable. You cannot get a policy at any price. If you can't get insurance, you can't get financing. If buyers can't get financing, your home is unsellable unless you find a cash buyer. And cash buyers know you're desperate, so they lowball. California has the same problem in wildfire zones. Some homes have become stranded assets. You own it, but you can't sell it for anything close to what you think it's worth. Climate risk isn't some future abstract concept anymore. It's actively determining which homes are liquid assets and which are traps. Pattern 3. The small home price war. In markets where inventory of smaller homes is tight, boomers are bidding against each other, driving prices up on a per square foot basis. This creates a perverse outcome. You sell your big house for less than you expected because large suburban homes are oversupplied in your area. Then you buy a small condo for more than you expected because small homes are undersupplied. Your downsizing discount evaporates. You're selling big and cheap, buying small and expensive. The math that was supposed to fund your retirement just got a lot thinner. Here's a real scenario with real numbers. Let's say you're in Illinois. You own a 2,500 square foot home worth $500,000. That's $200 per square foot. You want to downsize to a 1,200 square foot condo. If the price per square foot were the same, you'd expect to pay $240,000. But in tight markets, small homes cost more per square foot. That condo is actually listed at $320,000. That's $267 per square foot, 33% more per square foot than your larger home. After realtor fees, you net about $460,000 from your home sale. You pay $320,000 for the condo. You're left with $140,000. Sounds good. But you just spent 6% on realtors, another 3% on moving, inspections, and closing costs. Your actual gain is more like $110,000. And remember, your annual carrying cost might be higher in the condo due to HOA fees and insurance. Over 15 years, if your costs are $3,000 a year higher, that's $45,000. Your net gain is now $65,000. You downsized, you freed up space, and you netted about $65,000 over 15 years for the trouble. That's about $4,300 a year. Not nothing, but not the financial windfall you imagined either. Now, I want to shift gears for a second, because there's a cultural change happening that's going to define the next phase of this crisis, and most people aren't even seeing it yet. Here's the data point. Only 22% of boomers say they plan to leave an inheritance. That's roughly 1 in 5. Everyone talks about the $53 trillion wealth transfer projected by 2045. Massive number. Sounds great for the next generation. Except much of that wealth is going to be consumed by reverse mortgages, home equity lines of credit, and long-term care costs before it ever reaches anyone's kids. There's a philosophy gaining traction called die with zero. The idea is you should spend your wealth on your retirement, not preserve it for people who will inherit it when they're already in their 60s and don't need it. Use your home equity now. Don't leave it sitting there for your kids. I was talking to an estate planner a few months ago. She told me a story about a couple, both 76, sitting on a house worth $800,000, fully paid off. They were living on Social Security and a small pension, trying to stretch every dollar. She asked them why they didn't tap their home equity for a better quality of life. The husband said, "We want to leave the house to our daughter." The planner asked, "How old is your daughter?" He said, 52. She does the math. So when you pass, let's say in your late 80s, she'll be in her mid-60s. She'll either already own a home or she'll be close to retirement herself. She won't need your house, but you need money now. It took them 6 months to emotionally accept that logic, but eventually they took out a reverse mortgage. Not the whole value, just enough to travel, fix up the house, and live more comfortably. Their daughter understood. She told them, "I don't want your house. I want you to enjoy your life." That story is becoming more common. The cultural guilt around spending your home equity is fading. Reverse mortgages used to be seen as a last resort for desperate people. Now they're being repositioned as a retirement tool for asset-rich, cash-poor boomers. And here's the thing. If you take out a reverse mortgage at 65 and live to 85, the compounding interest can consume most or all of your home's value. That $53 trillion wealth transfer everyone's counting on, it might end up being a lot smaller because the money's being spent by the people who earned it, not passed down. Now you're asking yourself, is that fair? Is it selfish? And honestly, those are the wrong questions. The better question is, whose money is it? If you spent 40 years paying off a house, it's your asset. You get to decide what to do with it. If your kids are expecting an inheritance they didn't earn, that's a them problem, not a you problem. But here's where it gets politically messy. Boomers are also advocating for property tax relief while sitting on valuable assets. Illinois just passed Senate Bill 642, which expands property tax relief for seniors. Other states are considering similar programs. The logic is seniors on fixed incomes shouldn't be taxed out of their homes. That sounds reasonable. But younger voters see it differently. They see wealthy homeowners getting tax breaks while young families can't afford to buy in. They see generational wealth being protected while the next generation is locked out. The political tension is building. You have boomers saying, I paid into this system, I deserve relief. You have millennials saying, you're sitting on $700,000 in equity, and I'm paying your tax bill while renting. Both sides have a point, but the friction is real, and it's going to intensify as more boomers demand relief and more young people feel squeezed out. Let me bring this all together. Here's what you actually need to understand. The market everyone predicted didn't happen. The Silver Tsunami was a fantasy. Rate lock-in froze inventory. Boomers are still the largest share of both buyers and sellers, but the volume is nowhere near tsunami levels. The real crisis is a supply shortage in senior housing, with hundreds of thousands of units needed that aren't being built. If you're planning an eventual move to a senior living facility, wait lists are forming now, not later. The inventory mismatch means when boomers do downsize, they're competing with other boomers for small homes, not freeing up inventory for young families. Geographic patterns matter more than national trends. If you're in a high-tax state, your home value might face pressure from exodus trends. If you're in a climate-affected state, insurance costs could make your home unsellable. If you're moving to a hot retirement state, expect competition and high prices from other boomers doing the same thing. And the wealth transfer is shifting. Reverse mortgages and the die with zero philosophy are consuming equity before it reaches the next generation. So here's what to actually do. First, assess your local market, not the national headlines. Are you in a high-tax exodus state, a climate risk state, a hot retirement destination? Each scenario requires a completely different strategy. Don't assume the national story applies to your block. Second, if you're planning a move to senior living, research waitlists and timelines today, not eventually. Today. The supply shortage means eventually might not be available when you need it. Some facilities in desirable markets already have 2 to 3 year wait lists. If you're 70 now and thinking you'll move at 80, you might need to get on that list at 75. Third, decide right now whether your home equity is for your retirement or for your heirs. That decision changes everything. It affects whether you consider a reverse mortgage, a home equity line of credit, or a sale. It affects your timeline, and it affects your emotional relationship to the asset. If you're keeping it for your kids, you're managing it differently than if you're spending it on yourself. Both are valid. But you can't optimize for both. The silver tsunami everyone waited for turned into a drought, and droughts don't end quickly.